All right, welcome back to Breathe It Underwater's Moviecast. I am here with Kelly, whom we've known each other for more than like 20 years. We went to high school together.
Yeah, like 25.
So, hi, Kelly.
Hi. How's it
Welcome.
going?
A little quick history, then we'll just kind of jump into the whole thing. So, Kelly and I, we went to high school together, and I think you cut my hair a long time ago.
Probably.
Great clips, yeah.
Yep.
So I remember, I think you cut my hair a couple times before I went off and left
Did the
Pasadena and
college thing,
everything.
yeah.
Yeah. That was probably like one of the last times that we really interacted. And we've been on Facebook and stuff for years. But I don't know about you, but I'd rather talk to people, face to face or this kind of stuff than passively see it on a feed. So hence we haven't talked that much, but then passively noticed that you were doing a blog over the past year or so for movies that you had never seen and the kind of movies that people would expect that somebody have seen, like these classics and iconic films that,
and that was how it started. Those classics.
Do you want to tell us a little bit about what inspired it, and then we can get into the more of the specifics?
Yeah, so pretty much it was one of those things where I had a bunch of random different movies that anytime I told somebody, I've never actually seen that. They're like, what? How have you never seen that? I don't understand. Like, it's a classic. How have you never seen it? And like some of them were like, just incredibly popular. They, changed our entire society based off of a single movie, which surprisingly enough, Napoleon Dynamite was that movie that like everybody was the most shocked about.
Really?
Like, you never saw Napoleon Dynamite? And it's not even an old movie. It was just like one that hit our entire generation. And I was like, nope, I didn't want to watch it. That was actually, I think, kind of the worst response. People hated that I didn't want to watch the movie. I was like, it's not my thing.
Like being shocked that you haven't seen like Jaws or The Godfather or something, but like Napoleon Dynamite, it was an indie film that was very referential, but I didn't feel like it was really profound or anything.
In my group of friends, like they talked about the movie constantly. They would reference the movie constantly. They're like, how did you get away working with us, living with us, being friends with us, and never having actually watched this movie? How did none of us ever sit you down and force you to watch this movie? So yeah,
you just weren't part of the in joke. They needed you to understand.
Yeah, apparently. So yeah, I went through a lot of different things, and each one I wound up like, because it's really hard to try to figure out how to come up with 52 different movies that you want to watch. And I started like looking at the different months, and I started looking at the different like themes or like the heritage stuff and the different awareness things. So like April, the first month that I started doing this was Autism Awareness Month. It was, let me see there, because there was a bunch of things. It was autism. It was, I think there was something about Earth Day. That's what it was. Earth Day was in there. Yeah. So I did the March of the Penguins for Earth Day. And yeah, so it was like, I try to do like things themed to that. So like May being mental health awareness. I picked a couple different movies for that. It was also Asian Pacific in Heritage Month. So I wound up doing a Bruce Lee film. June obviously being Pride, so I tried to pick movies relating to Pride. And then I get to July, and July I think was like National Ice Cream Month. And I'm like, there's no movie I can pick for Ice Cream Month. Like, really? Okay. So instead I just made it musicals. So I went through and watched a bunch of musicals.
Okay.
And then it led into my classic films. It led into September. This was a fun one. So they actually had National Preparedness Month, where it was basically trying to teach people to how to be prepared in case of an emergency, to know like what you would do, where you would go, how you would deal with an emergency. I watched 10 Cloverfield Lane. Because that one definitely is a guy who made a bunker in case of anything going wrong in the world and he needed to be underground. Right. I felt it was kind of fitting. Yeah, that led into obviously October, different Halloween theme movies. November, like, the Movember Men's Health Awareness Month. So I did like a bunch of the guys movies. So that's when I threw in The Godfather and Scarface and Apocalypse Now, like the ones that like the guys always talk about, like, oh man, this movie was great,
Right.
So yeah, I try to use those themes to build up which movies I was going to watch, and it helped me a lot to plot it out. I didn't get to keep up with all of that. I tried as my best as I could. I think I've got like a total of like 46 posts or something like that, and a couple of them I had to do two movies in one because I was falling behind on writing it. It was like I would watch the movie, but then I didn't have the inspiration to sit there and type. I'd type like two sentences and I didn't know where to go with it. So I like walk away from it, come back another time. So that's kind of what fell behind a little.
But I mean, you got really close and you accomplished a
I
lot.
really did. It was a lot of movies for
I just think it's
sure.
really cool that you had this idea and then you gave yourself like the space and the format and the flexibility too to like make it more of what you needed it to be, and as opposed to like, because I get stuck on things sometimes where I'm like, I had this idea, it was supposed to be like this, and then it
Gotcha. Yeah.
evolves and changes. But
Yep.
sounds like you had like an idea about kind of filling a gap of experience, but then you let it kind of play out like organically.
Yeah,
That's cool.
so I'd started out just using the blog to like hold myself accountable to actually watch the films that
Yeah.
I was putting myself out to watch. But it was really like when I started talking to people about it, they're like, "Oh, what movie are you watching now?" And like everybody else started getting involved with like wondering what movie was the next up on my list or
Ooh.
what movie I had just watched. And then I'm like, "Oh God, I got to keep up with it now. People are actually like paying attention to this." So yeah, I've definitely been given a little bit more encouragement to keep going.
And all of these movies you had not seen before.
Correct. Now,
Wow.
there's like a couple where they were like borderline. So,
Like you had seen pieces or you knew a lot about it.
and mainly that was Elf.
Wow.
So, Elf, I had seen like a couple of clips and scenes here and there, and I had actually gone to see the musical at
Ah,
Toby's Dinner Theater. So, like, I had seen that, but the musical is not the same as the movie. And people had been talking about it for years. And it's just, I'm a hit or miss when it comes to Will Ferrell. I like
same,
when Will Ferrell is more of a person and
same,
less of a character.
same.
And that was a total character. But he did it well. So,
Well, I just really didn't like him as an actor or comedian until Stranger Than Fiction.
oh my God, that's one of my favorite films that he's ever
Right.
done. I
And
feel like that one is one of his best
it
works
gave
ever.
me a little bit of insight into who he is as an actor. And then I was able to go back and kind of appreciate things, because I remember I saw Anchorman. Remember Jumper's Hole movie theater where we
Oh
grew
yeah.
up? Yeah. And like I remember people dragged me to go see Anchorman when it came out there, and I didn't like him at the time. I really didn't like the movie as I sat through, because I don't find him funny in that
Right.
I didn't find him funny. But yeah, Stranger Than Fiction, I totally understand where you're coming from with that. And Elf, my family loves it so much and they watch it on repeat. It's hard to not
Yeah.
be taken in by its charm, I would say.
Yeah.
How'd you feel about that
So
one?
it was an okay movie. I enjoyed it. It was good for a, quality, like, family movie to sit down around Christmas time. It does bring out the Christmas spirit in people. It
Yeah.
gives you that awe and that wonder. But it's not one that I'm necessarily going to go back to over and over and over again. It didn't hit me that way,
Hmm.
but I enjoyed it. It was entertaining. So like I had a couple of those throughout this entire year of like, okay, I saw it. I'm not going to be pressed to see it again, but at least I
Yeah.
can say I saw it now.
My favorite parts of that movie were the more surreal, like abstract, like when he's leaving the North Pole and there's the stop motion stuff that's a throwback to like the
Yes.
Rudolph stuff, and
So,
it's so bizarre. I like that more than when he's just
did you
arguing with
watch
James
the
Caan.
Netflix special about it?
No, about
So,
Elf.
Netflix does a series called The Movies That Made Us.
Oh, I do know that. I just
And
never
they
saw
did
that
a
one.
Christmas one where it was like four different Christmas movies. Elf was one of them. So apparently they were at risk of getting sued by Rankin Bass because
No way.
they hadn't gotten like the permission to do all that stuff. So like all of the stuff for the North Pole, like the costumes that the elves were wearing, the way it was designed, like there was not much they could do. And eventually they were given the all go, but like they had
Wow.
all of the lawyers of their production company on set with them, like, okay, how much are you actually taking from them and how
What?
much is like inspired by, like, yeah, oh my God, you got to watch this thing, it's so fun.
It's crazy. Like, have you been watching this new season of Stranger Things or
I
Stranger Things in
haven't gotten
general?
a chance to watch the newest season yet. Because I play video games so much, I tend to not turn on the television so much. except for when I have to watch these movies, and I've been slacking on that for the past month. So I need to get back into that. And these are like the movies that I love. Like, you think I would just make time to watch them. Like, I just watched The Fifth Element last night because it's such an amazing movie. I should have watched it last month, but I just haven't watched a movie lately. So
But
yeah,
I hear you. I mean, you only
I
have so
haven't
much
been able
time
to
in the
sit down and
day.
watch the shows. Now, granted, Jeff, he winds up, that's my fiance, he winds up watching it all the time, over and over and over again. So like, I happen to be in the room and he's watching it, so I'm getting like bits and pieces of it where it's not all in its continuity. I'm not getting the full spread of the flow of the season. So
but the thing about it,
like
this season and all the seasons, people have been comparing, it's a very derivative show, but I don't see it as you were saying with the legal stuff with Elf. I could see people saying that with this season and like Freddy Krueger.
That's exactly what Jeff said. He was like,
so
dude, it's so
Freddy
much
inspired.
nightmare. Yeah.
But it doesn't even feel like it's just a wink and a nod. They have Robert Englund as a character in the show.
Told me that.
They have these dream sequences that are like right out of Freddy. And I love it because I'm like, oh, this is an obvious homage by people of our generation that wanted to kind of like paying respect by emulating, but in a twist. And like we talked about this, when I was in college for screenwriting, you hear it all the time. Like, there's no new stories. There's no new characters. There's only your personal experience and the story that you want to tell. But there's always going to be, and you hear this with like, legalities, and it happens all the time with music too, is like these 4 notes in a row, they sue somebody because it just happened with Olivia Rodrigo. And this happens like constantly, but this is one of the more recent examples. Like,
kind of like Vanilla Ice and Queen.
Well, but that was a sample. Like that's a different category. But like,
oh my God, did you ever hear his explanation for that?
Yeah, he says like mine's like da 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 da.
Yeah, it's like got that little at the end.
That's different. Plagiarism is one thing, but taking inspiration, paying homage. I mean, like Star Wars and Indiana Jones were like homages to certain genres and styles of filmmaking that they were directly pulling, like Buck Rogers and Westerns, and they knew exactly what they were doing with that. Maybe I missed something, but I don't feel like we heard a lot about the legality of it, and people were all up in arms about it now. But I mean, why would you not have a Christmas movie and not want to pay homage to the inspiration for that Christmas movie?
When it came to that, I don't know how much of that was the lawyers of their production company or how much Rankin Bass would have actually gotten involved. So it might have been one of those things where like their lawyers are like, oh my God, hold on, put a stop on this. We got to figure it out because we don't want to risk getting sued after the fact. So it might have just been their lawyers trying to protect their butts.
I've been meaning to catch up on those movies that made
my God,
I
love that series. I watch them over and over again. They're so good.
I've seen a few, and I, like you said, I'm always put my attention into other stuff, and I mean to get to things, and then it falls through the cracks. But I wish we could go through like movie by movie, because there's so much here, and there's so much here that I would echo. Like, I never saw this until later in life, or I never saw it at all. Like some of the stuff that you've seen, I never made an excuse to see that I was heard about. Like I'm looking right now, like I don't know, Boys Don't Cry, or
oh my God, Sam, that movie, Boys Don't Cry, wrecked me.
Singing in the Rain, like I know.
Oh my God, I love Singing in the Rain. Singing in the Rain was fantastic. I mean, utterly fantastic.
And I know these films from their iconography, from their cultural impact, but a lot of them, like Cleopatra, I've never had any desire to go watch it.
It's an incredibly long film.
Yeah.
But it's amazing. The visuals that they did, the sets they created, the costumes they designed. I mean, utterly amazing. And like, I know nowadays they would not pick someone like Elizabeth Taylor to play that role, but she was so perfect for the role then. Because like, if you think about it, when this movie was made in the 60s, I don't even think women could have their own bank account still. I think it was in the 60s still that women had to have a man on their bank account to be able to have a bank account. So it had to be their father or their husband or their brother. They couldn't have their own bank account. So for a woman in that age who was so strong and capable of like determining her own life and saying which direction she wanted to go, that perfectly mirrored Cleopatra being in a time where it was a bunch of men rulers, and she was the woman who was taking over and ruling a country, and standing up to these guys that are like, no, you're just a silly little girl, don't worry about this, we've got it. And so I thought she was kind of the perfect character for that, like the perfect portrayal of it.
Wow, that's fascinating.
Yeah.
I didn't realize the context around it too. It sounds like too, like this blog journey helped you discover things about like bigger picture stuff about these films and the historical context than you would have known.
So there were some of them that like, okay, I watched it, I enjoyed it, and I like wrote about, the movie itself. But then there were other ones that like I really got like something out of it to say something about society. Like even with In and Out. In and Out was, this silly little movie, but I wound up going in depth about how back in the 90s somebody that was gay, the type of things that they would have been faced with, the type of stigma that they would have had laced with this idea of, oh, you're gay, that means you're perverted. Not like this is just how you were born and this is just what you prefer. They saw it as a perversion. So it was like to get the context of what you were dealing with in that era was kind of fascinating too. Like actually pretty much all of the Pride Month movies like were kind of along that line. Priscilla, Queen of the Desert, I mean, like that happens in Australia. So that's not even here, and it's just seeing how another country dealt with it. It was kind of fascinating to think about it. Like One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, thinking about, mental health in the 70s. Like that was, fascinating. And like even in Rain Man, like thinking about the 80s of dealing with someone that had autism and we didn't understand it as much. This guy just comes in and takes him out of his perfectly little, like normal, like regimented world and takes him on a cross country trip without care or concern about the needs that this man has. He's just caring about what he gets out of it. It's kind of fascinating to see some of these movies and to relate them to the era that they were made and not just the lens that we see them with now, but to think about what it was like then when the movie was made, the general atmosphere of the world, I guess you could say, of like how people felt about these different topics.
Well, I think that's like film is sort of our, modern, not that literature isn't being created, but like art in general, but film is kind of like our modern society's literature. It's our portal into or a lens into what society is going through or what we're escaping from at any given time. And I know a lot of academia does respect, especially like classic film, for being that. But I'd like to see more of that too in not non-collegiate education and like K-12 education and stuff, where things like film and graphic novels and other mediums other than just because we tend to focus on, because of academia, like written literature as the main lens, or even art history, but even that isn't as widespread in terms of
people connect with film so easily.
I was a former special ed teacher, and I was working with like learning difference kids for a long time, and I taught film, and we found that, or I found, because I didn't have any background in that specifically, so I was getting my master's as I was doing my job, but I found I was able to kind of like hit the ground running in a lot of ways because of the tactile and visual nature of it, the implied information that comes from a visual medium as opposed to a written medium was just so much more accessible to everybody.
Yeah.
I think that's one reason that film is so profound, because of its accessibility. But okay, so going back for a second, like you had this kind of time frame, you want to do this over a year, and you knew that there was all these films that people were like, oh, you never saw this, you never saw that. So did you just start kind of like making a list? Had you had a list going already and like, I need to get to this someday? And then you compartmentalize into themes, or like did it all kind of happen at the same time?
So it kind of all came together at the same time. So like there was a few movies like randomly, like especially Casablanca, like everybody talks about that one. So like stuff like that where it's like, okay, it's such a well-known film. It's been discussed over and over by all of the different like movie critics, by, anybody that talks about film talks about these films. Right. And so that only started with maybe like say 10 or 15 movies. And I'm like, well, I can't stretch that for a year, so I got to keep doing this. So like I was like, how am I going to organize this? So that's when I came up with the idea of doing themes. Each month I do a theme.
Okay.
So then I started just doing a search of like, okay, what's the different theme this month? And that's when I started writing them all down and then coming up with films that fit the theme. Actually, I have my book probably right here. Yeah. This is literally how I started it all, just writing down movies and writing down months, and it was not an easy task for sure. So yeah, I would just write down like, okay, so January, it's National Mentoring Month. It's this month, it's that month. And so like actually National Mentoring Month was the only thing I had for January, and I was going to watch Whiplash and I didn't get to it.
That's a movie I haven't seen yet and I keep meaning to see.
And I wanted to see it, but unfortunately, because of me falling behind for my Christmas movies, I had to cut something out. So instead I watched $1 Million Baby, which was totally about a mentor, more so than Whiplash, I guess. I had no idea that movie was going to go the way it went. The left turn it took in that movie, it was not expected. I don't know how I've gone like 20 years without knowing what happened at the end of that movie.
I only know it because of an Always Sunny in Philadelphia episode. I've never seen the movie.
I didn't know what was going to happen. I didn't know what was coming. And I was like, oh my God, what just happened here? I'm expecting like a Rocky thing. Like, she's going to get to the big fight. She's going to win, like whatever. No, not what happened in that movie. So yeah, I was kind of blown away by that one. So yeah, and then I just kind of started writing down like the different themes for the months, and then just kind of writing in movies that I felt that fit the theme, and kind of went from there. It was a lot of pre-planning.
I really wish we could like go through every movie, but that would take hours.
Oh my God,
and there's so much here that I haven't seen, and you've inspired me to like, okay, you know what? I've never actually seen like The Fly. I've never seen
Oh my God, it was so
One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. I've never seen Million Dollar Baby, and I'm not a big Clint Eastwood fan, but it's beside the point. I've never seen Apocalypse Now. I've never seen Scarface. I'm scrolling through your list here. So many of these movies, like The Color Purple, The Help. I haven't seen so many of these as well.
So the thing that cracks me up with The Color Purple and The Help is I put The Color Purple in with Black History Month, and I put The Help in with Women's History Month. And I feel like I got them wrong. I feel like I should have switched them.
Okay.
But I didn't know, because
You
The
didn't
Color
know.
Purple, right. So like The Color Purple is actually more about the way women were treated in the early 1900s, because Whoopi Goldberg's character is constantly being treated as a possession. She's just sold off to a man to become the wife, to take care of his kids and his family. He treats her like garbage. She has no rights. Like, that's more of a woman's story than anything. And The Help was actually more about how the Black community was treated in the 60s, when they were being used to raise their children, but then they were still being treated like they were lesser than, but you're trusting them with your children. I felt like they could have been flip-flopped and put The Help into Black History Month and The Color Purple into Women's History Month. But it's one of those things, until you watch the movie, you don't really know how that goes. You don't really know the direction. Like, you get a little blurb, okay, I get it. But like, you don't. You think you do, but you don't.
All the stuff that came with this, you weren't just like passively watching movies just cause, like there's this whole other context to it. I think that's like really, really speaks to like why film and art is so profound and important.
Honestly, I don't know if I would have picked up on a lot of these things if I hadn't been making myself write a post about it.
Right.
Because I had to figure out, what do I want to write about? What do I want to convey to people? What do I think is worth sharing about these films? Like, you can't just write 2 sentences and go, okay, I enjoyed it, I'd watch it again. Like, that's not enough. So I really had to break down like what these movies were about, what I really took from it. And so it kind of forced me to really analyze them, not just watch them, not just enjoy them, to really like take it in and try to get what they were trying to say with it.
Again, I wish we could like talk about each one individually, but that would just go on forever. So I was just wondering, like, just off the top of your head, what really struck, other than what we've already talked about, or in addition to, after doing this, and like reflecting on it, what is like really stood out to you? What films rise to the top?
So Cleopatra, I was highly impressed with. I did not know it was going to be as long as it was. That movie is over 3 hours long. Like, it is a very long movie, but it was so well done. It was so immaculate. It was utter perfection. Schindler's List. I did that for Holocaust Remembrance Day, and I was a little late on starting it, but I felt it was really important to watch. And oh my God, like, I didn't realize the lengths they went to in that film to really convey what happened. Like, it definitely hit me hard. It's a Wonderful Life was one I really, really enjoyed. I had only seen like a 5-minute clip of it at one point. I knew the general mindset of it. I don't even see that as a Christmas movie. Like, I know I watched it for Christmas and people talk about it at Christmas, but that's just was a really well done movie that you could watch at any time.
I don't think they made it to be a Christmas movie.
It just happened at the end that it was around Christmas, so people like to watch it for Christmas. Obviously some of the classics, like I was really impressed with Singing in the Rain. It was just so much fun. Casablanca was just so well acted, so well put together, so well like directed, like all of it together was just amazing. Not a fan of Citizen Kane. That was like,
You hear that like one of the greatest films of all time. Some people are just like, what's the big deal?
I really did enjoy One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest too. Like, and it wasn't just about Jack Nicholson. There were so many actors that were young in that I was like, oh my God, this guy's from this, and this guy's from this, and this guy's from that. I was like blown away by
I
how
keep
many
hearing that.
people were in that movie. And the funny thing is, you get to the end of the movie and you're like, the story wasn't even about Jack Nicholson. It was actually about one of the other characters. Like, you feel like that was the one that you were supposed to be focusing on, and nobody paid attention to him throughout the whole movie. But like, the movie was really more about him than anybody else.
I love that idea. I've been noticing that more and more as I've rewatched stuff and understood story as a craft more. The idea that like a lot of times your main character isn't necessarily your protagonist. The people that goes through the change that go through a character arc isn't necessarily your main character. Like, the perspective isn't always the person that is like the actual carrying the themes and the I think so it sounds like I need to watch that to add that to my list.
With that one, it's like they used Jack Nicholson to tell this guy's story. So that was awesome.
I love that. I love that when that happens. I mean, even I would argue that like things like Star Wars aren't really Luke's story as much as like Vader's and stuff like that, which to me renders the prequels kind of unnecessary, but that's a whole nother discussion. You started with Citizen Kane. What else stood out to you as like you weren't as impressed with, or you were like, why is this so talked about? Why people always say you have to see this movie? Like Napoleon Dynamite, did that do anything for you?
It was entertaining. Like, okay, I get it. You guys enjoyed it, but it's not one that I feel like I'm going to go back and watch again. It's not my kind of film. Bad Santa was the same way.
Yeah.
So like, I never wanted to watch Bad Santa because the general concept of an incredibly drunken man playing this role of Santa Claus that children look up to and admire.
Yeah.
And this is what you're giving them. Like, I hated the concept. It's why I didn't watch Wedding Crashers either.
Yeah. Oh,
because that general concept of like, it's a basic thing that you just don't do in life. You just don't put somebody that drunk around children. You don't go to a wedding you weren't invited to, like those kind of things. Like, I don't like that general concept of that character.
I've had this inkling for a long time, and I think you just helped me kind of clarify what my issue is with a lot of I don't want to be like a curmudgeon and be like all things these days, but especially in television these days, television especially, like I get recommended shows a lot, whether through the algorithm or through people, but most of the time I'm not interested in it because of like what you just kind of alluded to, is a lot of times like these aren't likable or relatable or empathetic characters, that it's not an anti-hero situation either. You're just like rooting for like a pathetic, disgusting, awful person. For a lot of people, maybe not everybody, but I think the reason that story is so powerful is because you see yourself in the shoes of the characters. You want them to succeed, you want to follow them on their journey, and when you can't relate to them at that basic level of like empathy or even sympathy, just saying, like I want them to succeed. I don't necessarily like agree with them or see myself from their perspective, but I want them to succeed. I don't feel like that with a lot of stuff that I come across. That's one reason that like I'm not as interested in true crime and things, because it's oftentimes or like modern comedy, like raunchy comedy tends to be like kind of pathetic, despicable people being despicable. It's really cynical. There's not much to glean from it, or like it doesn't lift you up. It's not even escapism. It just feels like a reflection on, this kind of the cynicism and jadedness of our culture right now.
Yeah, it's another thing. Like Bad Bosses, I haven't watched for the same reason.
Yeah.
That whole mindset of someone that's supposed to be in a position of power who abuses it. I don't like that general concept. So yeah, no, I totally.
But then on the other hand, though, like one of my favorite comedies is Always Sunny in Philadelphia. Do you watch that show? On the surface, you would say that should be something that I hate, because none of those characters are like, I mean, they're the most despicable people, but it's very critical of them. Like it's a satire.
Right.
And I love satire.
I appreciate satire. I really do. I can really appreciate someone using something where like that group might think, oh, this is the best thing ever. It's exactly right. And like all the people on the outside of that group are like, yeah, it's exactly right.
Totally. As long as it's not like condoning or indulging in that cynicism, if it's criticizing it and kind of shining a light onto why it's wrong, I can totally get behind that.
You even think of like just This Is Spinal Tap.
Yeah.
Like it's a
Yeah.
total satire on the entire like rock industry and being rock stars. And even the rock stars are like, oh my God, that is exactly like, I think it was Alice Cooper was the one that was like, oh my God, were they with me? Because he apparently got lost backstage at one point.
Oh yeah.
And so he was like, oh my God, were they there? Did they know? And so, yeah, you think about that and like Best in Show, like really all of that whole
Mm-hmm.
entire series of like, they're using satire to poke fun at something. God, even the Book of Mormon. But at the same time, there's a
Mm-hmm.
little bit of love and appreciation for those things too.
Yeah.
So I think that's where the line is drawn. Maybe there's like they may be poking fun at it, but they still have a love and appreciation for like those little things.
Yeah, and like I don't feel like a lot of writers even like their character. I don't know if you've been watching the Disney Plus stuff, the Marvel and Star Wars
No.
stuff, but the biggest issue with it overall, I watch it, because partially because I'm invested in the universes, and I'm hoping that there's something constructive to glean from it, but also, the kids like it, so it's something we can watch together.
Right. Yeah, I'd seen
But
you had just started going through all of those. I still haven't seen Endgame.
oh, well, that's okay.
But
But
like
Marvel has this thing where I get excited about it momentarily. It's like dessert, in Finding
hmm.
Forrester, the Sean Connery movie.
Oh
You know
yeah.
that film? He's reading a tabloid, and the guy asks him like, he's like, "You're a recognized, awarded, like writer of literature.
Yep.
Why would you read this crap? This is trash." And he's like, he doesn't remember exactly what he says, but I read like literature for my entree, but this is dessert.
Oh yeah.
And I totally, that's how I feel about a lot of the superhero genre and stuff like that, where
Yeah.
it doesn't really like stick with me, or I don't feel a lot from it, but it's fun and colorful and in the moment, but
Yeah.
the Disney Plus stuff especially, and I'm it's happening all across streaming and networks too, I think, is I don't think writers care as much about, or at least the industry is hiring people, they don't care as much about the characters and the lore and the structure and the
Yeah.
foundation of like what's already been established, or what the audience expects. They care more about whatever they want to do with it now.
I feel like that with so many different films right now. You think about all the remakes, and it's like you have an amazing story and you have just butchered it. You
Yeah,
threw it out there, like you spat it back out, a chewed up version of it, but you forgot to include everything that made it good, everything that had heart to it. You've lost that. I
which is
feel like I've lost
crazy.
a lot of faith in a lot of modern screenwriters because
Yeah.
I feel like they're losing something that was so special and so valuable in the
Mm-hmm.
films that we've watched in our past, which is another reason I kind of went back through these other movies. It's like these are the movies that people still talk about. And this is going
Yeah.
to be 40, 50 years later and they're still talking about it. But there are so
Agreed.
many movies that come out now that people, when they talk about it, they're like, I don't need to watch that.
Well, even
That's
something
fine.
like you mentioned Endgame, like Endgame was a cultural phenomena, like, or like
Hmm.
the climax of a cultural phenomena. It was
Yes.
really like a fascinating kind of thing. But I've seen it a couple times, and when I saw it in the theater, I was pretty pumped up. It was pretty fun, but it was one of those things you walk away from, and the more I thought about it, the more I was like, well, that was kind of dumb, and that didn't make sense, and why did I don't
Gotcha.
know, and then as the years have gone on, I just really haven't want to revisit it, because I'm not, it was fun, and that's like Star Wars and stuff. Now it's like fun to see in the moment, and like, oh look, lightsabers,
Hmm.
but then when you really think about it, when you really process it, and you're trying to like deconstruct the meaning, the value of it, there isn't much. It's either just like nostalgia bait, or like, hey, remember this, you like this
Yeah.
thing, or there's some other agenda or message that they're trying to like, subversively push through with this IP is just a vehicle for
Hmm.
modern executives and writers to like push other agendas that
I feel that
they
way with
weren't
the new
part of
version
it.
of She-Ra.
Oh,
That
I won't
Oh
even
my God,
watch that.
I won't watch it. My stepdaughter did. And so I was around when it was on. And it's like they basically wanted to make the Steven Universe version of
Oh.
She-Ra. And I couldn't stand it. I couldn't stand what they did with the characters. I couldn't stand how childish they made them. One of the things I loved about that cartoon when I was a kid was that they were so adult and so mature, and it showed me how
Mm-hmm.
to act later. But it was like
That's a
this
good point.
show, the new version was just like, I don't know what, like glorifying this like immature, like non-growth kind of like, I just couldn't do it.
Hmm.
So yeah, no, I don't like the way they're changing the things that we love. Like, yeah, okay, you've got a whole entire group of people that want to watch these things you're coming out with, and then you butcher it and you break our hearts and then you just think that we're going to keep following you along blindly for the next one that you want to put out that we just don't care about. They did that with Gem. It had absolutely nothing to do with the 80s cartoon other than the name. They should have done something else with that. They totally ruined the whole concept of what Gem was.
Or leave it alone and make something new.
Yeah.
But they know that it's not going to sell. It's not going to get as much
They've run out
attention.
of ideas. And they don't like taking risks.
Yeah, exactly. Like if they have something that doesn't already have a pre-established IP and franchise and name recognition behind it and branding, they're so worried that it's not going to, but that's such a backwards way of doing things, because like you said, what ends up happening then is you're taking those same intentions for what could have been its own original thing, and you're just putting it like a cover over something that's already established and that people already care about, and you're ruining it for them, and you're just pissing everybody off.
Yeah, it's actually one of the reasons I got involved with Legion M, because Legion M is the first fan-owned entertainment company. Their whole mindset was, what if the people of Comic-Con owned an entertainment company? What kind of films would they put out? So I got involved with them, God, like 5 years ago, I think it was 4 years ago. You can actually invest in an entertainment company, be a part of it. And so they've been putting out these different films that have been really entertaining, and it's like new stuff, and they're taking risks. They're going to like, the Cannes Film Festival and Sundance, and they're like putting it out there of like, hey, what would you guys want to watch? And giving us the chance to actually put our input in. So yeah, I've been playing with that like lately. They've got an app called Film Scout, so you can go on there and they'll give you like two different like blurbs, like, okay, would you want to watch this movie or would you want to watch that movie, and you pick which one, and so that way they can figure out which ones to invest in.
I hadn't heard of this, and it's brilliant. Looking at it right now, and wow.
They just finished up their 8th round of investors, and I just invested for a second time.
What a great idea. Oh yeah, I'm gonna get on this too.
Start checking out some of the movies, because like one of them was Arch Enemy. It had Joe Manganiello in it. Ooh. And I love the absolute concept of this movie. So the concept is, you have a drunk homeless guy constantly talking about how he's from another dimension, that he used to like, have this immense power that he could punch through space time with just his fist. And he would he had somehow gotten kicked out of that dimension and got blasted into ours. And the thing that gave him power doesn't exist here. So now he's just a basic guy living here. And this random kid that lives in this city finds him and wants to tell his story, and starts talking to him and getting his story. And then you start finding out he really was from another dimension. He is not making it up. He is like literally from another dimension. And so he decides to protect this kid when his sister gets involved with this drug lord that runs the city basically. And she is in a bad bind, and they want to kill both her and her brother. And so Joe Manganiello winds up trying to protect this kid and his sister, because he's created a bond with them. And he's like, well, maybe this is my purpose here. Maybe this is the reason I'm in this dimension right now. And you're like, he's just crazy. But then like it starts getting further into the movie, and you're like, oh my God, no, he's really not crazy. He's really telling you the truth. So it's like such an out there kind of movie, but like it was so good. And it's a whole new version of like the anti-hero type of thing. It was great. Yeah. So the first one they produced, they came in after the fact. They just got involved like when they were doing marketing. So the movie had already been made. It had already been developed, and they were just trying to get it out there. So Legion M invested some money in to help them with the marketing. That movie had Anne Hathaway and Jason Sudeikis. And it was called Colossal. And it was
I didn't know that was Legion M. Okay.
Yeah, so they came in at the end. That was the first film they invested in. And then they started investing in other things where they would like, be in different parts of production. So there was one called Mandy with Nicolas Cage.
I've heard of Mandy. I haven't seen it. God. People love that movie.
The necklace I'm actually wearing is the necklace. I mean, it's the beast. That's the weapon that he winds up creating. It's the axe.
Cool.
So like they actually have merchandise on their website that you can buy. So like I've got like the We Are Legion M shirt on right now.
I saw that, and I was wondering if that's what that was. So okay. So, yeah, I didn't realize that so it's basically like a crowdsourced investment opportunity for Hollywood.
Yeah.
Okay, that's awesome.
So you get your say in it. I love it. So yeah, they're like starting to get into Comic-Cons and start talking to people and getting more and more investments. They've been really like stepping out. So yeah, they've got a new one coming out called The Man in the White Van, and it's got oh my God, Samwise Gamgee, what's his name?
Sean
Rudy and
Goonies. Stranger Things.
Yes. Oh my God, he was the best as Bob. I loved him.
Bob the superhero.
He really was.
Isn't it Sean something?
It is Sean. Yes, you're right.
Aston. God. Oh,
there we go. And I'm thinking
uh,
of P. I don't know where I'm getting P from. No. Because my brain keeps thinking Patton Oswalt, and I'm like, that is not the name I'm looking for. So that's why I couldn't get past it, because I was stuck with that. So yeah, Sean Astin. So yeah, he's gonna be in that one. Oh my God, they did one that was what's the guy's name? David Tennant, I think
oh
he was
yeah,
one of the
Doctor Who
doctors. So it was called Bad Samaritan.
Ooh.
That was a really entertaining movie. I really enjoyed that one too. So yeah, they're pushing boundaries to create new things and to actually put the investment into things that the bigger Hollywood companies are afraid of, that they're like, I don't know, this might be too risky. So like Legion M has that little bit of leeway to like, oh, well, we know we have an entire group of people that we will have like, to come and see this film just to, support it.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's been pretty cool, the stuff that they're coming out with.
Well, thanks for introducing me to that. I'm gonna go check it out and support them. Now that you've finished your year-long You've Never Seen That project, you have now started a new blog called You're Watching That Again?
Yes.
Question mark, exclamation mark.
So with that one, after doing an entire year of movies I've never seen, I like started just thinking about movies in general. And there are just some films that you just go back to over and over and over again. It doesn't matter how many times you watch it, you still enjoy it for whatever reason. You find new things about it. It just hits you in the heart. And like, especially after, going through 2020, people were definitely clinging to the things that they found comfort in.
Yeah.
So I started looking through like, what would I do for this? What would I do for that? So when I started trying to figure out what movies I would watch and when I would watch them, I didn't want to do the same themes that I did with the first one. I decided that I'm going to try something completely different. So April is so far the only month that I actually have movies posted for, because May I fell behind so terribly. But April was Tim Curry's birthday. And so I did an entire month of Tim Curry. And I had to think of like, well, what movies of his do I watch over and over again? Because he has such a vast filmography. Like he is across the board with so many different things. So the films that I did for that, like I started with Clue, because that is one of my favorites from him. I absolutely love Clue.
Yeah.
And it's one that gets overlooked a lot because it's not him being a character. It's just, him being a simple butler, but like he's still just so Tim Curry in it. It's so great.
Tim Curry.
And then I had to throw in Legend, because Him is the Darkness is just fantastic. And that's just one of those movies that hits so many boxes of like fantasy and that good versus evil and the imagery and the visuals of it. Like there was just so much going on with that. And then I did Congo, and not as many people liked Congo from what I was reading. It actually had some low ratings on like the Rotten Tomatoes meter. I just love Congo. I loved so much about that. And his role as Mr. Homolka, so fantastic.
Stop eating my sesame cake.
Yes. And I had to actually put that little gif in the blog, because like that is one of those, that whole entire scene, I mean everything, you surprised him. It's like, because she elbows him. It's like, oh, you surprised him. So you got a big mouth. He's like, oh, everybody says that about me. That guy alone carried that scene. And then you go and throw in Laura Linney, Ernie Hudson, and Tim Curry. Like that was just like the perfect combination of a scene. Like that was amazing.
There's something about that movie. Well, because when I was a kid, I wasn't allowed to see. My parents they're pretty strict about like, you can't watch PG-13 until you're 13 kind of stuff. So like I wasn't allowed to see Jurassic Park and stuff like that. A lot of the Michael Crichton stuff that was getting released in the 90s before, but they let me read the book, which is so ironic because like a lot of times the book is more
intense.
And your imagination can be
exactly
too.
It takes you to a whole new place.
But like I read like Andromeda Strain and Congo and Jurassic Park and Lost World and stuff before the movies came out. So like Congo always had a special place in my heart because I was always fascinated with sign language. I was fascinated with Africa, the Congo region and stuff like that, and the wildlife. And I can recognize now that the movie probably isn't what people wanted or expected based on the book. But as a movie, like it's so entertaining and different. It checks a few different genre boxes. It's everything. It's basically like sci-fi adventure action with a little bit of like, espionage thriller. Kind of stuff. It's got some like fun crossover genre stuff. It doesn't and it's got a lot of humor. It feels like the kind of movie that was made with a vision. It wasn't the vision that people necessarily wanted, but it wasn't just some churned out adaptation, like you were saying before, where they gave you on the surface what you thought you wanted. That's kind of how I felt about the first 2 Harry Potter movies. They were just so exactly what you expected. There was no flavor, there was no personality. It was just, but Congo
And you know, the funny thing is I actually like the first 2 Harry Potter movies better for that reason.
Oh, okay.
The later ones, I was so mad that they changed so many things.
And I totally get that. And I am definitely a shill for the books over I would never tell anybody, oh, you like Harry Potter, you've never seen or read it, you should definitely see the movies. No, I always tell them to read the books, of course.
Yes.
But on a purely cinematic level, like I'd prefer Prisoner of Azkaban just because of the direction.
And I hated Alfonso Cuarón's direction in that film.
Really?
I
respect that. I know a lot of people do. A lot of people
I have never really like paid that much attention. And then they did that film and I was just like, I don't like the little things that he did.
So
like
self-aware
to spend 30 seconds following a bird to hit the Whomping Willow.
Yeah.
But you can't spend 30 seconds explaining exactly who the Marauders are.
Right.
My sister walked out of that theater and went, I don't understand. Who are the Marauders?
That's why I think like as a writing experiment, the movies weren't great adaptations. And maybe the first 2 were the more solid ones because they were so like page for page.
Yeah.
But in terms of like just a cinematic experience, like I prefer I guess like 3 to 5. David Yates is really worn on me, but but at first, like I loved Order of the Phoenix. Again, it was like such a dense book that had so much condensed and cut out. But I thought the film as a standalone movie worked for me like better than the first 2, because the first 2 is just like there's no surprises and they feel like a TV sitcom, kind of like the way that they're directed and lit.
So the funny thing is that's like the 2 different categories, I guess you could say, because some people fall into I want the exact replica of the book. You give me everything that you can from the book in the exact way that it happens and I will be happy. I'm apparently in that category. And you're in the I've already read the book. I want something a little different, which is the reason those other directors went that route. They're like, yeah, but see, everybody knows what happens in the book. I'm like, yeah, but no one that has never read the book is going to care if you do it exactly like the book. But the people that have read the book are wanting that
and
that representation to be correct.
Yeah, but I'm not advocating for like major changes for changes sake. Keep the essence of the story and the characters the same, but it's just the presentation of it. Like it's a different medium, so it requires different like intentions. And sometimes, going back to Congo, like if I were to make that movie based on the book that I read, I probably have a much different interpretation of it. But I enjoy the movie so much just because it's a fun movie.
Yes.
And it has so much going for it.
It really does. Ernie Hudson is one of my favorite characters in that entire film. Like
the great White Hunter.
Monroe Keller. Yes, although I happen to be Black. Like I love that man for that role.
I need to go watch that now. I used to watch it over and over again. And the gray gorillas with their like skull smashing hands, like that always scared me so much. And this is a good monster movie kind of stuff,
It really was. It really pushed like a lot of, like I should say, it ticked a lot of the boxes that I have of movies that I love that I can go back and watch over and over again.
And all the practical effects and everything too were a lot of fun.
And it's funny because like a lot of those gorillas, like they were just people in suits.
Yeah.
But they did a really good job to mimic the movements of a gorilla. So that way you felt like it felt more real.
Yeah, take that, Andy Serkis. They could do it in a suit.
I know, right? They didn't need to be in a
mocapped.
Right.
Thank you so much for taking the time to do this. And
absolutely.
Maybe what's your time frame for your new blog?
So
a year?
Yeah, I planned out a year. So I've got, cult favorites. I've got July is planned to be a month of Robin Williams because that's also when his birthday is. And then I've got a month for like family friendly stuff, oddball comedies. That's where I'm throwing in like Strange Brew, UHF, Young Frankenstein.
Ooh, UHF. I'm a huge Weird Al fan.
Yes, absolutely. Did you see the illustrated book that they're doing for his?
No.
Oh my God, I'll have to send you a link for that next time it pops up for me. So yeah, I'm like going through like different themes this time instead of doing the same thing I did last year. I'm trying to change things up a little bit. And I have a feeling things are going to get pushed a little bit because my entire month of May got messed up. I think I'm going to wind up taking like the June movies and just pushing those off until like maybe at the end of this again, like do that next year. So that way I can keep up with my Robin Williams in July. Because I want to make sure I don't mess that one up because I love that man and the films that he's done. I actually have the only stand-up comedy on my entire list is in July with him because his Live on Broadway was pure perfection.
Classic.
And so I had to put that in there. Even though all the rest are movies, they're all like, planned out productions. I had to put that on there because I literally quote that movie at least once a week for the past 20 years.
Nice.
Like, I don't go a week without thinking of some line from that film.
That's Tommy Boy for me.
Yeah. Oh, really?
Yeah.
I know there's some of them, they just stick with you like that.
Yeah. I love this idea because it makes me think of all what I would do in your place and from my experience. But so maybe we can touch base at some point, see how the journey is going, or just wait till it's done and do this again if this was fun for you.
Yeah, and I tell you, when you start doing something like this, people are going to start telling you all kinds of movies you need to watch. Oh, and that I've actually thought about doing a third year of it. It's like, oh, you know what you need to watch? Yeah, I'm jotting down all these ideas. I've got so many people telling me, oh, you need to watch this film. You need to watch this film, and I'm like, I have so many films to watch right now. I don't know if I can fit it in.
Well, I was going to mention earlier too that in college, when I was in film school, a lot of the stuff, like especially your classic stuff on there, I only watched because I had to. I was shown it in school, and I never would have watched it on my own. Like Citizen Kane and stuff like that. But that inspired me to there were some things that hit me so hard, like On the Waterfront was something, and things like that, and a lot like French New Wave stuff I never would have even known about, and silent film and a lot of 70s experimental stuff and whatever. But I had a list, before I had a smartphone. I just had like a notebook in my pocket, and I would just, every time something would bubble up or would come up in conversation or, something I hadn't seen, I had this pages and pages of stuff that I had meant to get to. I don't know what I ever did with that, but
I'm sure you'll find it hiding in some corner.
Yeah. So I had that intention too, a long time ago, that I would at least as part of my film academia. Career, my completionist mentality to watch all the things, but who knows how much I actually got through? Probably not even a sliver of it. So good for you for giving yourself an excuse to do it.
It kind of forced me to. Yeah, it kind of pushed me.
Well, thanks for your time.
Absolutely. And it was good. It was fun.
Hope to have you on again.
Yeah, that works. I can do that.
Be sure to visit breathingunderwater.us. Follow me on Instagram at breathingunderwater1 and on Twitter at breathingdakine. That's at breathingdakine. And drop me a line at breathingunderwater1@gmail.com. Please note that I do not claim any ownership of any media presented in this podcast, which is only used for promotional purposes unless otherwise noted. And all views and opinions are those of the person expressing them and do not represent any other entities discussed in this podcast.